Hello again, and welcome back to Lonely Rider's channel. Again, we're going to be looking at the Gen 1 Z1000. Lonely Rider is not a professional mechanic and is not responsible for any personal injury or vehicle damage that may result from individuals attempting the repair shown in this video. You have been warned. Try at your own risk. Before we get started today, I'm going to give you just a brief history lesson. Back in the 70s, Kawasaki made an air-cooled cruiser bike called the Kawasaki Z1. It was a very successful bike. It sold well. Fast forward to 2003, Kawasaki decided to bring the Z1 back, updated of course, and thus was born the Z1000. To save on some manufacturing costs, Kawasaki reused some parts from their other bikes. For example, the Z1000 has the exact same engine block out of the ZX9R, which was Kawasaki's flagship motorcycle at the time. It was replaced in 2004 when Kawasaki unveiled the ZX10R, but in 2003 they made the ZX9R its last year alongside the first year of the Z1000 side by side, and they had the exact same engine, modified of course. The ZX9R engine was an 899cc engine. For the Z1000 they took that and they bored it out to a 953cc engine, put a different cam on it, and of course made it fuel injected. The ZX9R was downdraft carbureted. The Z1000 was fuel injected with cams geared more for low end power, and of course bored out to a larger displacement, a 953, and they just rounded up to the nearest 100 and called it a 1000. So because this bike has the exact same motor as the ZX9R, it's actually very common for people to kind of swap some engine parts back and forth across the different bikes. For example, one mod that is also popular that I have not done is people will actually take the ZX9R cams and valve springs off of a ZX9R engine and put it on the Z1000 engine to achieve more higher end power. I did not do that mod, nor am I planning to, but just to give you an example of some of the cross part swapping that they do. One of the common mods to this bike that I have done is what is called the ZX9R Flywheel mod, and just as it sounds, it is swapping the stock Z1000 flywheel out for a flywheel off of a ZX9R Ninja, because again, it's the same engine block, so the bolt patterns and everything are identical. Now, as I said before, I can't really show you how to do this mod because I've already done it and I'm not taking all that apart. Sorry, I'm just not going to do that. But I can show you what I can show you and show you some pictures that I took when I did the job, and I kind of can explain to you the process and how you go about doing it.
Okay guys, here are some pictures that I took of this modification back when I did it. I always like to take pictures of what I do, so at least we have these to look at. So here it is before I begin the job. Here's the stock Z1000 stator cover right here. I'm getting my old pan and everything ready to take it apart. And there's what it looks like when you take it apart. So there's the cover down there with the stator bolted into it from inside. Right there is another bolt that holds on a little piece of metal, a little bracket that holds these wires down in so that they don't rub the flywheel as it's spinning around inside the case. And then the wires go up around here. So now here's the stock flywheel right here. Here is the nut on the end that holds it on. You need to break that nut free. It's on there pretty tight. You might need an impact wrench, or you might just need to put a socket on there, a ratchet, and maybe tap the ratchet with a hammer to try to break that loose, but it's on there pretty tight. After you get that off, then you need some kind of a puller. You see there are outside threads on the flywheel in there. You're supposed to be able to put a puller on that, or put a puller on it some other way to pull the flywheel off the shaft, because it's pressed in there very, very, very tight, and it's going to be really hard to get off. And then behind it there is the gear. You have to take these bolts out inside that you see. Those bolts are actually bolting it onto a bearing, and this is just an idler gear here that connects the starter motor right here to the crankshaft so that you can crank over the engine. That gear right there just free floats on that shaft. There's nothing holding it on. It literally just can slide right off. Once you take the flywheel off, that just slides off as well. And so that's pretty much the setup there. And here you can see that I've taken the flywheel off. There is the old flywheel and bearing, and the gear still on there. And here is the ZX9R flywheel, which also came with another bearing and another gear. They're identical, so it doesn't matter if you use your existing one. The existing bearing and gear will work with the other flywheel. So if you buy a flywheel and it does not come with the bearing or the gear, don't panic. You can just reuse the ones that are already in the bike. But there it is. And here is a comparison of the two different flywheels. Here is the stock Z1000 flywheel here. Here is a ZX9R flywheel, and you can clearly see the difference in the thickness of the flywheel. The Z1000 flywheel is very much heavier than the ZX9R flywheel. I don't know how many ounces it is. I didn't measure it exactly, but you can just feel the difference holding them in your hands. The ZX9R flywheel is significantly lighter, and that's the whole reason people do this modification, is to shave some weight off of the crankshaft to reduce the parasitic loss of the engine. That's the whole reason for doing the modification. And here we are. I have got it back together. I've got the ZX9R stator case, engine case on. I got the stator inside there, of course, and the new flywheel in, and I ran the cabling up here. Now you will see, I will talk about this later in this video, the connectors for the stator for the ZX9R are different style than the connectors on the Z1000, so you're not going to be able to use the connector that comes with it. You're going to have to pop it out of the connector and put the cables in by hand. I will show you how to do that later in the video, but there's pretty much the finished product there, just to show you what you're looking for. And here's another picture again of all the pieces that are involved. This is the gear. This is the bearing that bolts onto the flywheel. The flywheel is here. And then here's the original stator with the original cover and the gasket that goes on it. The gasket is the same gasket. It will fit the ZX9R cover, same as it does the 1000. The bolt patterning and everything is all identical. But there's all the components from the original setup, and that's kind of what it all looks like.
Unfortunately, when you do this mod, you can't just change the flywheel. You can't. You have to change the flywheel, the stator, and the engine cover, because the inside diameter of the Z1000 flywheel is smaller than the inside diameter of the ZX9R, like I just showed you in the pictures. So the stock stator will not work in the ZX9R flywheel because it's too small. So you have to get a ZX9R stator as well, which is larger. But you can't use the stock stator cover with the ZX9R stator because the ZX9R stator is too big to fit inside the stock cover, because this portion of the cover is smaller. So you have to buy a ZX9R cover, which is large enough to take the stator that fits with the flywheel. As I showed you in the pictures, after you take the cover off, the flywheel is on the shaft with a bolt on the end. In order to get that bolt off, you're probably going to have to use an impact wrench to get it off. But even after you get the nut off, the flywheel is very, very tightly on that shaft. So tight that you actually need some kind of like a puller to pull it off. You might be able to get a gear puller to work. You might be able to rig it to work. But basically, if you're in a situation that I was, where I could not get the thing off of there, you're probably going to have to break down and buy one of these things, which is really unfortunate because it's such a specialized tool that you're probably never going to use it again. But this is designed to screw on to the flywheel like that, and then just like a gear puller, and then you draw in the center one, which is reverse threaded. You draw that in, and that will push against the shaft and pull the flywheel off. And unfortunately, this is a big piece of steel, so it's not cheap, but if you can find some other way to do it, great. But if not, you might have to break down and buy one of these. I'll put the link in the description. But so when you tally it all up, this modification isn't really as simple as it might sound. You actually have to buy a lot of components. You need to buy the flywheel, the ZX9R flywheel, ZX9R stator, ZX9R engine cover, a new gasket because you're going to destroy the one you're taking off, and you might even have to buy a puller to take it out. So it's actually going to be a pretty expensive modification. I did not realize I was going to have to buy this going into it, because I got in there and then realized I couldn't get the flywheel off. But I was kind of already committed because I already bought all the parts and I already had it torn apart. So I just kind of broke down and bought this just to finish the job because I was frustrated and I just wanted to get it done. But you might want to think about it to weigh whether or not you really want to do this. It probably is going to give you a slight performance bump, but looking back on it, this is one mod that I probably could have skipped and wouldn't really feel much difference. It does take some weight off of the crankshaft because the ZX9R flywheel is substantially lighter than this heavy thing, but you're just gonna have to weigh out for yourself if you think it's worth all of this to do that. I mean, I don't have dyno numbers to give you, so I can't really tell you you know, how much of a performance boost it's given. I would say if you do all of the mods with this bike combined together, the flywheel mod, the airbox, exhaust, you know, power commander, secondary butterflies, and put all that together, it probably makes a combined impact, but I can't give you any real numbers. But that's the mod. A lot of people have done it. It's up to you to decide if you think it's worth it or not. I did it, but I did it kind of without realizing it was going to be that involved, but I did it and it's done. There is another thing I'm going to have to show you though as well. The Z1000 stator has a connector that looks like this. It's a round connector. When you buy the ZX9R flywheel, it's going to have a totally different connector on it that will not work with the stock connector on your bike. So let me take my tape off here and I'm going to show you what you're going to have to do. Okay, so as you can see what I've done here, what you're going to have to do is, let me just remove these for you, is you're going to have to, so basically you got to take apart the plastic connector. I don't have it anymore, I threw it away. You got to take the plastic connector that these come in when you buy this stator. You got to take that apart and take these 3 wires out of it. They'll already have metal connectors on them. You leave those on, but just take the wires out of the plastic harness and wrap them all with black electrical tape to insulate them because you don't want them to touch each other. And then you just stick them on the connectors that are inside that black connector there. After you make sure they're all 3 firmly on, then you just wrap the whole thing with black electrical tape like you see that I had done earlier, just so they don't move around or come off of there. And that's it. Also, it does not matter which wires go to which ones. It doesn't matter. It's not like this one has to go to that one. It doesn't matter. There's just 3-phase. It doesn't matter which ones are hooked to which ones, as long as they're all 3 hooked up to one of the 3 wires in there. They all 3 need to be hooked up. Just like that, and then just tuck it back in there and then put the side plate back on, and that's pretty much it. And then the stator, when you get this cover, it'll obviously be empty. You use the bolts because the bolts will work across this one to that one, so you use the same bolts from this, take them out, put the bolts to put the ZX9R stator in that cover. You're going to have to use, you know, there's a little metal clip that is held on by this screw, which holds the wires down so that the flywheel doesn't catch them. You're gonna have to remove that little metal clip from inside here and reuse it inside there. And basically just put it all on, make sure everything's tight, make sure you get the ZX9R flywheel on tight and get that nut back on hard, and put everything together, your new gasket bolted down. That's pretty much all I can tell you about this mod. Again, I did it back before I had a YouTube channel, so I can't really film the process of me doing it. I just explained what I explained. I gave you the pictures. You're just gonna have to kind of figure it out for yourself. Then wire those up like I showed you, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I've had it like this for probably 3 years now, and I haven't had any trouble charging my battery or anything. It's been working fine, so that's pretty much the mod. Catch you guys later.